5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0.
For many Catholics, the bread and butter of our faith, the thing that we do most often, is the Mass. But what exactly is the Mass? Where did it come from, and why do we do it? That's what we're going to be talking about today on Ignition. Welcome to the show. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Bergwald, and we want to set your faith ablaze so that you might live the adventure that comes from a relationship with Jesus Christ. Before we get into the Mass, we want you to know that we love listener feedback. So if you've got questions about today's episode, or if you have ideas for future episodes, please contact us. The easiest way to do so is by email, and the address is ignition@sfcatholic.org. Again, ignition@sfcatholic.org. I'm joined in the studio for, I think, a record-breaking number of times.
I don't even know how many it's been in a row now.
It's like Michael Phelps winning 8 golds at the
Only it was
Beijing
that
Olympics.
awesome.
Wow, that's true. You're right.
Yeah, that'd be pretty awesome.
Renae Kranz. Hi, Renae.
Hi.
Real quickly, Renae, who are you? Why should we care?
Well, you can care if you want.
Why should we care?
Renae Kranz. I am the editor of the Bishop's Bulletin for the Diocese, director of communications. Married to Ryan for 19 years. Been in Sioux Falls 16 years. South Dakota native. How about that?
Sounds good. Renae, we're going to start not with the topic of the Mass.
Uh-oh.
Why are you doing this?
Why am I doing what?
Ignition.
Because you asked me to.
Yes, but why'd you say yes?
Because I feel sorry for you. No, that's not it. Probably a sense of obligation that I feel like if you ask me, I should say yes.
Okay.
And
that's good to know.
Sheer
So just
dumb curiosity.
Sure. I would unpack the second answer, but I'm glad to hear that whenever I ask you to do things, you're going to do them out of a sense of obligation.
I didn't say I was going to do them all the time.
Sheer dumb curiosity. Say more
sheer
about
dumb
that.
Curiosity. Isn't it why people listen? Sheer dumb
so why
curiosity.
do people listen?
So I'm sort of acting as the audience, and I feel like the audience needs to have a representative here sitting in front of you.
It's a good idea.
So they cannot have to take the brunt of your questions.
That's true.
I will do it for them.
You are very, what's the...
Astute? That's the word I want. Bill's laughing hysterically at that.
Scapegoat. What a kind scapegoat you are.
That was not the same.
I'm your host, Dr. Chris Bergo. I'm going to set your faith ablaze. Why do we want to set people's faith ablaze, Renae? I go on to say why, but...
So they can be fantastic missionary disciples.
And why,
I know you don't say that.
Why would that be of value?
Because Jesus told us to.
Oh, because he said so.
Jesus said so. But he wants us to spread his message so that everyone, or as many as possible, will be saved. We'll get to spend time in heaven with him. All time.
So,
not just sometime.
We're going to get to today's topic, but we're going to go a little further down this rabbit hole. So, if you're not Catholic, you can't be saved.
Oh, no, you can be.
Okay, so then why be missionary disciple? So why do you want to set people's faith ablaze? You want to set people's faith ablaze so they can be missionary disciples to other people. Why?
Because the fullness of the truth that God revealed resides in the Catholic Church. So it is, in theory, your easiest path to heaven.
Okay.
I'm not sure if it really is for some of us, but
right.
You can tell me if I'm totally off base.
That's good. That's true. That's true. I want to pivot a little bit here.
Tell me where you want to go, and I'll...
No.
Why?
Why for you?
Why what for me?
I was just going to leave it that way, see how you handled it. Why do you want your faith to be set ablaze? Do you want your faith to be set ablaze?
Yeah.
Why?
Because it'll actually make life more fun, I think. More interesting.
Why? There we go. Why?
I think if you read the Bible and all the things that Jesus and his disciples did, some of them were a little dangerous and scary, but they were always interesting. They were always meeting new people, doing new things.
The Kranz proposal, like there's the Queen's Gambit. The Kranz proposal, the hypothesis is that when your faith is set, the more your faith blazes, the more interesting life
I think
is.
the audience right now is saying, this woman doesn't speak for me.
The scapegoat she is that, but is that
Sure. Yeah.
As
I mean, so we can, you ask me these questions and
I know, isn't it?
yeah.
Fun?
Yeah, sure. I'm going to stick with that. So I can love
Prove
my
it.
family well and other people well. Yeah,
no,
see, then I knew you were going to be like, no, sorry.
No, that's true, but that's...
So life can be interesting and yeah.
So how is the last question along these lines? How has the deepening of your faith made your life more interesting?
Well, that's a good question. It brought me here to the diocese.
It got you a job. Does that
to
mean your
work
life
a
is...
job that I love and that I'm very well suited for, that I wasn't working before. So doing those things has brought me a much greater fulfillment in my work life. And then, of course, that is going to spill over into the rest of it because obviously that's part of that too.
That's actually
some of that made no sense.
That's a good... Well, I'm used to that with you.
Yeah. As soon as I said it, I was like, that could have been better.
No, I like it. And actually, that's going to set us up well for next week's episode.
Oh, okay.
What's next weekend, Renae?
22nd Sunday?
No, that's this weekend.
Next weekend. I don't know.
Shoot. 2 weeks from now.
Well, 2 weeks is Labor Day.
Yes.
I was going to say, next weekend is not Labor Day.
No. As people are listening to this, it'll be Labor Day weekend. We're going to talk about work.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, we're recording this early. So
yeah,
as
that's
folks
why
are
I'm
hearing
confused.
this, next week's episode is going to be on Labor Day. We're going to be talking about work.
Okay.
We're not talking about work today. We're talking about what we do the day before the work week begins. So I started off by talking about how the bread and butter of our faith is the Mass. And I suppose, is there something else if you were to think about what's the bread and butter of being Catholic? Is there something else out of curiosity that you would, yeah, I'm Catholic and therefore don't eat fish on Fridays during Lent, maybe, or...
No, I think go to Mass has got to be
confession, maybe.
Believe in Mary.
Yeah, those sorts of things.
Believe in Mary. That was weird, too. Sorry.
You're the one who keeps drawing attention to your weird comments.
Stop talking.
I just let them go. The Mass. So I know this is a topic that you're interested in. We've been talking about this actually kind of lately, or at least an aspect of the Mass, one of the core dimensions of the Mass lately on Biblical Bites. Mm-hmm. The little people, if people, because some parts of the listening area may not hear Biblical Bites. What's Biblical Bites? What's it part of?
Biblical Bites with Dr. B is part of Catholic Views, which is on Sunday mornings on Real Presence Radio. So Biblical Bites is a little section that we do with Chris that he picks out some little thing from the readings for that weekend and tells us, usually it has to do with maps.
Not for a while.
Not for a while,
Bill,
but
it's been a while.
But yes, it's all kinds of different things, little tidbits. It's usually pretty good.
That's also a weird
Usually
one that
good.
I'm drawing attention to.
Yes.
So what have we been talking about lately?
We've been talking
in
about...
addition to how much I say so as part of Biblical Bites.
We've been talking about John's Gospel 16. 16. Is there even a 16?
There's John chapter 16, but
chapter 6.
John, the bread of life discourse.
Yeah.
And what's the connection between John chapter 6 and our topic for today?
Gosh, that holds a lot of teachings about laying the foundations for the Eucharist.
Yeah. So if somebody may, and I want to speak here especially with a specific potential audience member in mind, maybe somebody's listening to this right now, Renae, who's not Catholic, or maybe is Catholic but not a regular churchgoer, so maybe the Mass being the bread and butter of their faith. Well, maybe not bread and butter because it's not a part of everyday life the way that bread and butter is. We talk about the Eucharist. What does that all mean? Like, let's kind of stop the inside baseball and speak to maybe people who aren't as familiar with what for Catholics is, many Catholics, is the bread and butter of their faith.
Right.
So
do you have a question in there that you want me to answer? Or are you
I thought
answering
I asked
it?
one. But
I couldn't tell for sure.
Yeah. What is the Eucharist?
It is the representation of the Last Supper. And it's where the priest changes the bread and wine into the body and blood of Jesus, soul and divinity. And we then get to consume him and have Jesus inside us for a little while.
So great, a lot of things in there to unpack. Yeah, a couple little I
am the audience, so I am just a regular, normal Catholic.
So the Eucharist can refer to a lot of things, right? So you described sort of there what the Mass as a whole is, and Eucharist, but the Eucharist can also refer literally to what was bread and wine and becomes, as you said, the body and blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. To tease out some of the things that you said, to unpack them, shed light, clarify, because you beautifully said that the Eucharist, in the sense of the Mass is the representation. This is one of the things, not just of the Last Supper,
right,
but also of
the crucifixion
and
resurrection.
So
all of it.
It's so the Mass is a representation of everything from the Last Supper through, well, frankly, through the Ascension.
Oh, sure.
But we speak most often about the Passion, Death, and Resurrection.
Right.
So it's the representation of the Passion, Death, and Resurrection, which includes the Last Supper and actually extends. So the Paschal mystery goes beyond that to the Ascension. I'm going to come back to that, though, in a little bit, explain more about what that means. Another question to get at this then. What's the difference between the Mass and a communion service?
Like a communion service for another faith?
A Catholic communion. Oh. Okay, let me put this to you this way. What's the difference between Mass, as we experience it every Sunday, and Good Friday's liturgy?
Yeah. Good Friday does not go through the Eucharistic prayers and the changing of the bread and wine to body and blood. So what they do in that service is take the body and blood of Christ from the night before.
Yep.
It's already been transubstantiated.
Yep.
And they use that in that service, so it's not technically a Mass because they don't go through all of that.
Right. So the Eucharistic prayer is not prayed. There are no words of consecration.
Right.
This is my body. This is my blood. Right. So, but Jesus is given to us in communion.
Yeah.
So what's the difference between? I mean, you said what else would you say? Is there anything else that comes to mind of? Therefore, what's the difference between the Mass and liturgy in which communion is distributed and received?
Well, then that wouldn't be a full representation of it.
Right. So it's not a full representation of the Paschal mystery, the Passion, Death, and Resurrection of Jesus Christ. So let's go back to that then. So you use the word representation, perfect word. What does it mean, though?
That's like trying to define transubstantiate. You aren't going to ask me that too, are you?
I won't, because you just asked me not to, but I won't.
Representation, presenting again.
Okay. What does that mean? We're going to talk about that in just a moment, but in case folks are just tuning in, you're listening to Ignition. I'm your host, Dr. Chris Bergwald, visiting today with Renae Kranz about the Mass. And my subtitle, by the way, for this episode of Renae is what? You've got it on the sheet in front of you.
Doesn't mean what you think it means.
Doesn't mean what you think it means. Does that sound familiar to you?
Yes.
From?
You all the time.
Okay.
What do you mean? Why?
Never mind. You keep using that word. I do not think it means what you think it means. The Mass means more than most of us realize, is what I'm getting. And so representation is what we're just talking about. And that begins to get at it. So he said it means to present again.
Yes.
So what's presented again?
The Passion, Death, and Crucifixion of Jesus. So it's basically the Last Supper, especially in that when he offers up his body. That's all represented, but it's representing the sacrifice that Jesus makes for us.
So
we're not crucifying him again, which is a very key, important thing
of distinction. Yeah. So in the Mass, you keep going back to the Last Supper, rightly so, because the Last Supper was in a sense the first Mass. It's anticipating what was going to happen the next day, where Jesus would literally give his body and blood for our
If he hadn't
salvation.
done that, the crucifixion would have made 0 sense.
Right. So in the Mass, Jesus, the sacrifice that Jesus made, his passion, death, and resurrection, is represented, meaning, as you said, that it's here again. It's not repeated, it's represented. So the Mass happened what? So we'll do a timeline for you here. So we get this right here. Okay. The Mass happened back here.
Right.
The crucifixion happened 33-ish AD. But because Jesus is God, in a sense, everything that he did is also outside of time and eternity. So when we say that in the Mass, the sacrifice of Jesus, the whole passion, death, and resurrection of Jesus is represented, what we mean is that one thing that happened way back here is outside of time and therefore, in a sense, re-enters time every time the Mass is celebrated. From way back then
to now
till the end
God
of
can do that
time.
whenever he wants.
Right. So when we celebrate the Mass, we are present at the Last Supper, the crucifixion, the resurrection, and not as much emphasized, but nonetheless the church teaches at the Ascension. So we're present, and not just metaphorically and not just in our imaginations. When we celebrate, and you can look at it either way, either we're present or it's present to us. It doesn't matter. The point is that we are before Calvary. We're in the upper room. We're at the empty tomb. Those moments which saved us, the moments by which Jesus died and rose again for our sins so that we can enter into heaven and have the fullness of joy and happiness and peace and so on, are represented for us to participate in. Where did we get this idea?
I assume from the early church fathers.
We got it from Jesus.
Or that too.
But he was not, but in fact, this is just in line with an ancient Jewish practice, not of celebrating Jesus' passion, death, and resurrection, but the idea that God's saving events would be somehow in a mysterious but real way liturgically represented for me to participate in is a very ancient biblical pedigree.
Think of the Passover. Yeah.
Ding, 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 ding.
Yep.
So what's the Passover?
When the angel of death passed over the Israelites' homes that were marked with the lamb's blood.
Where was this?
In Egypt.
When was this?
A long time ago.
Long time ago.
A long time before Jesus even.
3,500 years ago-ish, like 15, 16, 17 BC, somewhere in there. Moses. And then God does. So angel of death passes over, Passover. And what happened right after that, or as part of that, if you will?
He freed them from slavery in Egypt.
So God saved his people. So from that, the Lord, through Moses, told the Israelites that in their case, an annual celebration, every year, I want you to celebrate that Passover meal where you ate what?
Bread.
And
the lamb.
And would they drink?
Wine of some sort, but I can't remember.
Wine.
I don't remember. It was called something specific, but I can't remember.
So bread, wine, and also unleavened, bitter herbs and so on. So they are to celebrate in perpetuity, forever, as a perpetual memorial, the Passover. So up to today, since then, up to today, and now there were some times in Israel history they sort of forgot. And then, oh my gosh, we've been not doing something the Lord asked us to do. But pretty much every year since 1600 years before Jesus, the Israelites, the Jewish people, celebrate the Passover meal. And the word there, it's a memorial sacrifice. They are remembering that meal where their ancient ancestors sacrificed a lamb, an unblemished, that is flawless lamb, was sacrificed, its blood spread, they ate its flesh, and God saves them. As part of all this. So when they celebrate the Passover, you hear about a Seder meal. That's a Passover meal. And with the theology, and maybe the average Jewish person doesn't realize this, but the Jewish theology, the Jewish teaching remains that when they do so, they are present at the Exodus.
Right.
They are being saved from slavery in Egypt. This certainly was the Jewish belief at Jesus' time, and as far as I know, it's still the Jewish belief today.
Right.
But in Jesus' time, they still believed that when we celebrate the Passover meal, we are participants in the Exodus.
Yeah. So it would be natural for us now for that to be the same when Jesus, he was doing the same thing.
Right. So what kind of the Last Supper, what kind of a meal was the Last Supper?
It was a Seder meal, wasn't it?
It was a Passover meal. And there was bread. He said he took the bread. That's the Passover bread. And he had wine, and he took the wine and blessed it.
But he said different words here.
But there was no lamb at the Last Supper. So the apostles are probably like, wait, what's going on here?
Not only is there no lamb, but he's also not saying the same prayers or saying additional things instead of
he's changing it. There's no lamb there. Where's the lamb? Without the Passover,
so they clearly would have remembered that.
There was a lamb present.
Yeah.
It's him. Yeah. This is my body. Eat. He tells them to take and eat. This is my body. Take and drink. This is my blood. So what Jesus does at the Last Supper is celebrate the first Mass, in which the Passover is taken to another level, where it's not just commemorating freedom from literal physical slavery in Egypt. Now it's the celebration of freedom from the spiritual slavery of sin.
Right.
And so all those present, Jesus and his apostles, they're Jewish. So for the apostles going forward with Mary and all the other first disciples, they would have looked at the upper room, and they were there. Those who were there would have recognized that this was our Jewish Passover meal, but now it's been transformed, taken to another level, and become something new, where we're not commemorating the Exodus from Egypt, we're commemorating the Exodus from sin.
Right.
So when you and I are at Mass, we are present. The Passion, Death, Resurrection, the Last Supper is represented for us. We get to participate in that. So even if, let's say, I completely forgot, I walked into church sipping my coffee. I don't know why you're doing that, but the fact, or maybe because of a serious sin, you can't receive communion this week. You get to confession, but it didn't happen yet. Whatever. Even if you don't receive communion, this is where I'm going. Even if you don't receive communion for some reason, you're still present at the means by which Jesus Christ saved the world.
Right.
You're still present with Mary, his mother, with John, the beloved disciple. You're at the foot of the cross. You're present with John and Peter and the other apostles at the upper room. You're present with the angels and nobody else at the resurrection. We are participants in those saving moments. So, I know you and Bill have highlighted the fact that I keep saying so now I'm very aware of it, but I don't care. It's a Bergwaldism, apparently. What more incredible thing is there than being at the passion, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ? If we truly understand as Christians, and most of us get it here, but do we get it?
Right.
If we truly understand the power and the importance of Jesus' passion, death, and resurrection, and then if we understood what Jesus said when he said at the Last Supper, do this in memory of me, where he's hearkening back to the ancient Hebrew idea of a liturgical memorial, a representation of God's saving event. If we understood, therefore, that at the Mass, we're not just remembering like imagine now, holding your mind's eye, the passion. No. That it's truly, yes, mysteriously, but it's truly happening. The veil between heaven and earth is pulled away. We're participating in the heavenly liturgy and what happened 2,000 years ago nearly. What more incredible, more interesting thing, to go back to the beginning of the show, could there possibly be than the Mass?
I can't think of one.
I mean,
I think if we all really understood that, we'd probably walk in and just kneel. I mean, you just fall down on your knees the whole time.
You know, there have been saints, pre-saints in particular, I'm thinking of, who their Masses would last for hours. And I'm sure some of us were like, okay, Father, the Vikings game, Bears,
really.
Pack, whatever. We got the football game. Well, never mind. It's over.
I'm really hungry. Really.
But they were caught up, literally in some cases, in ecstasy. Because they knew, not just in their minds, but in all of their being, what was happening.
Right.
What they, together with the congregation, what they were participating in, what he as the priest was leading us in celebration of.
Right.
The representation, as you rightly said, of the passion, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ.
Yeah. It's one of the reasons we like to sit in front, because I like to be as close and be distracted as little as possible so I can feel like I'm paying attention and taking part in what's going on.
Right. And again, I want to emphasize, so we haven't, and we don't have much time left, we haven't really talked a lot about the real presence, the truth that Jesus Christ is. You spoke to it earlier. He's truly present, body, blood, soul, and divinity. But again, I wanted to highlight what happens at the Mass, even if for some reason I don't receive communion.
Right.
Even if I don't receive communion, the most amazing thing has just happened. Now, in a minute, it's to be topped off by, yes, the opportunity that we all have, if we're in the state of grace as faithful Catholics, to receive, again, the body, blood, soul, and divinity of Jesus Christ. The living God, this is what we read about John chapter 6, as you talked about. The living God comes to dwell within me truly and really.
Right.
There is, we talk a lot, and rightly so, about having a real relationship, a personal relationship with Jesus Christ. And this relationship is so close that he literally gives me, and he's not dead, right? It's not just like part of him. He's giving all of himself to me to dwell in me, at least for a little while, body, blood, and soul, and divinity. What more incredible thing? Those two, apart from everything else, the Mass, the readings, the prayers, it's the presentation of the passion, death, and resurrection, and then communion. What an amazing gift we have in the Mass.
Yeah. I often think about when I'm sitting in Mass that the angels are there, all the saints, your family who's in heaven now, like they're all doing this Mass with you.
Amen.
And they're with you because it's all happening in heaven too. So whenever I think about that, it's like, you can just picture this big crowd. It's a bigger crowd than what's there.
It's an awesome thing. And we're done with the show for now. We'll see you next time. May God bless you.